All right, let's step into our first example. This position is taken from the game Vitiugov, Sahakyan, played in Baku 2015, and you may know that both players are specialists in this structure. In the game, bishop e7 was played, followed by f3, bishop g6, and white was eventually able to get the bishop pair. And if you have a look at the continuation of the game, you will find out that actually having the bishop pair can become a long-term advantage in this structure, and an important one. So to avoid this thing, what our friend ShashChess did is suggest the novelty d takes c4. And really, its idea is that it wants to give black dynamism before white can stabilize his own position and get the bishop pair. So after the moves bishop takes c4 and c5, we are at a crossroads. Here the most natural move, the one recommended by ShashChess, is castle. However, I want to mention one additional line just because I was afraid of it personally, and you may share my fears, so let's check it. This is bishop takes e6. I simply find it scary from a human perspective. Of course, ShashChess doesn't agree with me. It would probably mock me if he could speak. It just says that after the first line, f takes, knight takes, and some exchanges follow. We reached this position where I was afraid that the rooks on h8 and a8 will remain stuck there forever. This position actually reminds me of a game played in Biel 2009 between Morozevich and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, where black eventually managed to win the game, but still he struggled with his rook stuck in the corners. And if you want, just go and have a look at that game. And here ShashChess recommends the amazing h5, which in that game wasn't possible because white had a pawn on h5 himself. But really after h5, according to our engine, black just will develop the rook, take the king out of danger, and nothing will happen for black. So quite impressive cold blood from our friend ShashChess. So let's go back to the game. After castle, the natural move suggested by the engine, we have some developing moves. Here white has to play bishop e1 if he wants to save the bishop. And after takes, I will give you a taste of the natural language generation comments that you can find with the commercial version. For example, these comments will tell you that the worst pieces that black has are the knight on e5, which is hanging, and the bishop on f8, which is underdeveloped. This makes sense, right? The second thing that it will tell you is also that white's threat is to play d4, d5. This also makes quite a lot of sense because white has an isolated pawn and he wants to open the files by pushing it, right? Black has a king in the center, so why not? And if we go on, it suggests a move that I, again, found hard to understand at the beginning because I was expecting black to have to develop his pieces instead of just going back with the knight. But if I then compare the evaluations of Stockfish, so a more traditional engine, and ShashChess, and I was surprised. Stockfish here says that it's 0.85 for white. And if you're familiar with engines, 0.85 is a lot, right? It's almost one extra pawn. Whereas for ShashChess, this position is 0.03. If you also add the experience to it, it becomes 0.07. It's a huge difference. And if we want to check who's right, we can only go on with the analysis. So let's see what happens. After d5, again, the threat that our natural language generation identified, we can have a couple of exchanges. And apparently, in the final position here, the engine is not worried about the black king being in the center, black being underdeveloped. It simply suggests h5, which is an interesting move. It's trying to push that pawn forward, maybe even attack on the king side, as many AI engines have told us, and perhaps develop the rook with rook h5 and h6. And for him, the point being that after bishop c3, which again tries to squeeze black, the engine finds this move, which forces a queen exchange, and with the queen exchange, it also eases the pressure. So for example, after we exchange queens, the engine goes into this endgame where it doesn't care about giving up the pawn on e5. White can take it. The point is that we activate our pieces with the rook on e6. And after a couple of moves that are just to illustrate what could happen in this endgame, we reach this position where I stopped, because here, even from a human perspective, I'm able to understand why this position is defensible for black. Although black is down by a pawn, white's extra pawn is the double pawn on the b5. That cannot go too far. And also black has very active pieces. His pawns are on the light squares. So I don't see how white could make big progresses here. So I find it quite amazing that ShashChess was able to understand all of this, starting from that position where we compared it to Stockfish. Now let's have a look at the second example, which shares some similarities.